shut out of the conversation is something public figures have been dealing with for years in the wake of cancel culture. Tonight, our fact-check team looking into the current controversies and the impact it can have.
Joe Rogan is at the center of outrage after a couple of controversial guests appeared on his interview-style podcast. And in a letter to the streaming platform Spotify, where the podcast can be found, a group of medical professionals saying the podcast was harmful and promoted baseless conspiracy theories. So tonight, this is what the fact-check team is looking into. Janae and John. John, we first start with you. Break this all down for us, how this comes together. Rogan, his podcast, the platform, and the attempts to cancel all of them.
So that letter that you mentioned calls Joe Rogan's podcast highly controversial and pointed to his guest, Dr. Robert Malone. Rogan defends statements from his podcast about topics like spreading COVID while vaccinated or the effectiveness of cloth masks, saying those were previously labeled with advisories on social media but are now the subject of published research and openly discussed in the media. The letter against the podcast said that because of its reach of up to 11 million people, Rogan and Spotify had, quote, damaged public trust in scientific research. They said that the show had, quote, sown doubt, making societally harmful assertions, asking the platform to, quote, immediately establish a clear and public policy to moderate misinformation on its platform. Now, Spotify is placing an advisory, much like the ones you see on social media, with any mention of COVID-19 in that content. So despite the facts of what Rogan said in a statement yesterday, he did apologize and promise to make changes. We should point out that the doctor highlighted in the letter has made multiple statements that have proven false about COVID-19. Spotify has not publicly taken any negative actions against Rogan or his $100 million contract.
And a big talker last year was, of course, comedian Dave Chappelle's Netflix special called The Closer. He sparked some controversy with his comments about the transgender community. Now, Netflix employees resigned or were fired. There were protests. Groups labeled it as anti-LGBTQ content, but Netflix never pulled the special. Chappelle assured folks that he was not against the LGBTQ community and that it was more about corporate interests. He said that he would meet with the trans community but wouldn't bend to anyone's demands, given the time to digest what he said and the audience support. Even the New York Times admits the whole issue just fizzled out.
Janae and John, thank you so much for that. Stay with us when the fact-check team returns. They go back in time to see exactly where cancel culture events like these came from and what impact they've had over the years.